Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be continuing my monthly series on murderers who were jailed in England in a specific month of the year, looking in this video at March of 2025. And I've selected 14 cases involving 14 individuals who were jailed for the offence of murder, including one individual who was given the rare sentence of a whole life order, which means that they will never be released from prison. And they join an infamous club where around 75 to 80 people are currently serving that sentence. In this video, I'm going to briefly go through what each of the individuals has done, cover the sentence that they received, and then try and pick out something noteworthy, such as the judge's comments on the individuals. Welcome to my channel, Andy on Crime, where I talk about high-profile criminal cases and other aspects of criminal law in England and Wales. And if you would like to support my channel, then you can click the link in the description down below and sign up with NordVPN, where you can get big discounts on a range of their plans. And by doing so, you will be helping out my channel. So thank you if you do sign up. And just before we get into this video, this is something that if you're a regular viewer of my channel, you'll hear me say on each of these videos. Anyone convicted of the offence of murder in England and Wales will be given a mandatory life sentence. The only question is how long the minimum term or tariff will be. This is the period that someone will serve in full before they are eligible to apply for parole. Now that doesn't guarantee that they will be released. It's only if they are deemed no longer a danger to the public that they will be released. Now, in rare cases, and there's an example in one of the cases in this video, someone can be given what's known as a whole life order, which means there is no minimum term. That person will never be released from prison, aside from an appeal or some sort of issue with that case. With all that being said, let's get into the video. At number 1 on the list is Ayub Khan, who was sentenced on the 3rd of March. Ayub Khan, a 29-year-old resident of Harborne in Birmingham, murdered Richard Hopley. The incident occurred on the 22nd of September 2022 during a robbery in Underwood Close in Harborne. On that day, Mr. Hopley was driving a drug dealer around the area when he was ambushed by 4 individuals, including Khan, Nicholas Stallard, Paul Hayes, and Mohammed Kazim. Despite not being the one who inflicted the fatal stab wound, Khan was armed with a knife during the attack. After sustaining serious chest injuries, Mr. Hopley managed to drive a short distance before collapsing at the wheel and crashing the car. Following the attack, Khan fled the United Kingdom. He remained abroad until his return in September of 2024, when he was arrested by the authorities. Prior to Khan's arrest, the other 3 men had been convicted for their roles in Mr. Hopley's death, receiving combined sentences totaling over 50 years. Khan's involvement made him the 4th individual to be convicted in connection with this case. At Birmingham Crown Court, Khan was found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit robbery and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 29 years and 199 days. At number 2 is Mark Donovan, who was sentenced on the 5th of March. On the 25th of April 2023, Donovan murdered his ex-wife Elsie Mason, who was 37, at his home in Great Baddow in Essex. He inflicted 70 separate injuries on Elise in a sustained attack that involved both blunt force trauma and strangulation. Donovan and Elsie had been married but separated in 2022. Unable to accept the end of their relationship, Donovan persistently attempted to reconcile, bombarding Elsie with messages and calls. On the day of the murder, Elsie was last seen alive approaching Donovan's house at around 4:09 p.m. After the murder, Donovan exhibited a disturbing lack of remorse. He visited a nearby pub, disposed of Elsie's phone in a pub toilet, and then frequented 2 massage parlours. In the early hours of the 26th of April, he walked into Ilford Police Station eating a Chinese takeaway and confessed to have done the worst thing. Upon his confession, officers were dispatched to Donovan's home, where they found Elsie unresponsive near the front door, still wearing her coat and shoes. A post-mortem examination revealed extensive injuries consistent with defensive wounds, indicating that she had tried to protect herself during the assault. During the trial at Chelmsford Crown Court, Donovan claimed that he acted in self-defense, alleging that Elsie had attacked him. However, the jury rejected this narrative, convicting him of murder after just over 3 hours of deliberation. During sentencing, the court heard about Donovan's history of domestic abuse, including past convictions for harassment, breaches of restraining orders, assault, and making threats to kill a previous partner's stepfather. On the 5th of March, Mark Donovan was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 18 years. At number 3 is Anthony Hoey, who was sentenced on the 7th of March. In the early hours of the 30th of March 2024, 50-year-old Hoey fatally stabbed his partner, 48-year-old Frances Dwyer, at her home in Mulwich Road in Tarlecross in Birmingham. Hoey inflicted more than a dozen stab wounds before fleeing the scene in Frances's car. The vehicle had been reported stolen a week earlier, prompting officers to pursue Hoey. The chase concluded when traffic officers deployed a stinger device to halt the car. Hoey was apprehended after being tasered during the arrest, and he falsely claimed to be armed with a gun. Following Hoey's arrest, officers visited Frances's residence, where they discovered her deceased with multiple stab wounds. The severity of the attack underscored the brutality of the crime. On the 6th of February 2025, Hoey pleaded guilty at Birmingham Crown Court to the murder of Frances. He also admitted 2 counts of theft, aggravated vehicle taking, and dangerous driving. Hoey was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 21 years. At number 4 on the list is George Ness, who was sentenced on the 10th of March. On the 22nd of September 2024, 41-year-old Ness brutally murdered 63-year-old John Smith in Wallsend, North Tyneside. John, who was originally from Glasgow, had relocated to the area from Derby. The incident occurred when Ness, in a state of intoxication from drugs and alcohol, attempted to force his way into a neighbour's residence on Holly Avenue. John, who was visiting this neighbour, intervened to prevent Ness's entry. In response to John's intervention, Ness launched a violent attack using a substantial wooden block. He struck John multiple times on the head, inflicting fatal injuries. After the assault, Ness searched John's pockets and stole his mobile phone before fleeing the scene. Emergency services arrived promptly, but despite their efforts, John was pronounced dead shortly after their arrival. A major investigation was initiated by Northumbria Police. Ness was apprehended later that morning at Wallsend Metro Station, located less than a quarter of a mile from the crime scene. A vigilant member of the public had alerted authorities after noticing blood on Ness's clothing and legs. Ness was subsequently charged with John's murder and possession of a bladed article. During the police interviews, he claimed that he acted in self-defence. He pleaded not guilty to the charges and stood trial at Newcastle Crown Court. After a 9-day trial, the jury found Ness guilty of murder, but acquitted him of burglary and possession of a bladed article. On the 10th of March 2025, Ness was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 22 years. At number 5 is Kyle Clifford, who was sentenced on the 11th of March. In July 2024, Kyle Clifford, a 26-year-old former British soldier, committed a series of brutal murders in Bushey in Hertfordshire. The victims were his ex-girlfriend Louise Hunt, her sister Hannah, and their mother Carol, and the events unfolded at the Hunt family home. Following the end of his relationship with Louise on the 26th of June 2024, Clifford meticulously planned the attack. He purchased weapons, including a crossbow and a butcher's knife, and gathered materials such as petrol and duct tape. On the 9th of July 2024, Clifford arrived at the Hunt residence under the pretense of returning Louise's belongings. Once inside, he initiated his assault by fatally stabbing Carol. After killing Carol, Clifford waited for Louise to enter the home from her dog grooming business located on the property. Upon her return, he restrained and raped her before shooting her with a crossbow. Hannah arrived during this time and was also attacked and killed by Clifford using the crossbow. The murders were discovered when Hannah managed to call the emergency services before succumbing to her injuries. A manhunt ensued, leading to Clifford being found injured in a cemetery near his home in Enfield on the 10th of July 2024. He had inflicted a crossbow wound upon himself, resulting in paralysis from the waist down. Investigations revealed that Clifford had been influenced by misogynistic content online, including videos by the controversial figure Andrew Tate. This exposure contributed to his violent behaviour and the premeditated nature of the attacks. During the trial at Cambridge Crown Court, Clifford refused to attend proceedings. He had pleaded guilty to the murders and the false imprisonment of Louise, but denied an additional charge of rape. However, he was found guilty of rape based on forensic evidence and the circumstances at the time. On the 11th of March, Clifford was sentenced in his absence to a whole life order, ensuring that he will never be released from prison. The judge described him as a jealous man soaked in self-pity who meticulously planned and executed the murders. The severity of his crimes and the lack of remorse were significant factors in the sentencing decision. At number 6 is Hassan Sentamu, who was sentenced on the 13th of March. In September 2023, 17-year-old Hassan Sentamu fatally stabbed 15-year-old Elian Adam in Croydon, South London. The incident occurred during a confrontation over personal belongings following Sentamu's breakup with Elian's friend. Elian intervened to retrieve her friend's items, leading Sentamu to chase and stab her multiple times, including a fatal wound to her neck. Witnesses reported that Elian pleaded for Sentamu to stop during the attack. Despite immediate medical assistance from bystanders and emergency responders, she succumbed to her injuries at the scene. Sentamu fled but was apprehended by police within 90 minutes. At the trial, Sentamu admitted manslaughter, claiming his autism spectrum disorder as a factor, but denied the charge of murder. The jury rejected this defence and found him guilty of murder. The court highlighted his premeditation, noting that he had armed himself with a kitchen knife prior to the confrontation. On the 13th of March 2025, Sentamu, who was then 18, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years. At number 7 is Mark Ross, who was sentenced on the 14th of March. In August 2024, Amazon delivery driver Claudio Carol Condor, who was 42, was murdered in Leeds in West Yorkshire by Ross, a 32-year-old career criminal. Mr. Condor was in the process of delivering parcels in the Armley area when Ross attempted to steal his silver Ford Transit van. Determined to protect his livelihood, Mr. Condor clung to the open passenger door as Ross drove away. Ross accelerated to speeds approaching 60 miles per hour through residential streets, swerving erratically and colliding with parked vehicles in an effort to dislodge Mr. Condor. Despite these dangerous manoeuvres, Mr. Condor held on for approximately half a mile. The ordeal ended tragically, however, when Ross crashed into a stationary vehicle, causing Mr. Condor to suffer fatal head and chest injuries. Following the incident, Ross abandoned the van and fled the scene, leaving Mr. Condor critically injured in the road. Emergency services arrived promptly, but Mr. Condor was pronounced dead at the scene. An investigation led to Ross's arrest, and he was subsequently charged with murder. During the trial at Leeds Crown Court, evidence revealed Ross's extensive criminal history, including previous convictions for theft and burglary. The prosecution emphasised Ross's blatant disregard for human life, highlighting his reckless actions that led to Mr. Condor's death. The jury found Ross guilty of murder by a majority verdict of 10-1. On the 14th of March 2025, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years. At number 8 is Dellan Charles, who was sentenced on the 17th of March. On the 18th of May 2023, a violent incident unfolded in Hayes in West London, resulting in the tragic death of 30-year-old Sean O'Neill. The altercation began between two rival groups on Reynolds Road. During this confrontation, 23-year-old Charles pursued Sean down a quiet residential street. Upon cornering him, Charles attacked Sean with two knives, repeatedly stabbing him whilst shouting, "Die, die, die." CCTV footage captured Charles calmly leaving the scene after the assault. He navigated through nearby suburban gardens to evade immediate capture and disposed of one of the knives at a nearby address. Subsequently, Charles devised a plan to flee the area, successfully evading authorities for nearly 10 months. During this period, the Metropolitan Police conducted an extensive manhunt, meticulously piecing together evidence and tracking Charles's movements. Their efforts culminated in his arrest in Coventry on the 27th of March 2024. Following the arrest, Charles was charged with the murder of Sean, and the trial took place at Kingston Crown Court, where the jury were presented with compelling evidence, including the CCTV footage and witness testimonies detailing the brutal nature of the attack. On the 11th of December 2024, Charles was convicted of murder. On the 17th of March 2025, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years. At number 9 on the list is Nicholas Prosper, who was sentenced on the 19th of March. In September 2024, 19-year-old Nicholas Prosper from Luton committed the murders of his mother, Juliana Falcon, who was 48, his brother Carl, who was 16, and his sister Giselle, who was 13. These tragic events occurred at their family home in Luton on the 13th of September 2024. Prosper harboured intentions to execute a mass shooting at his former primary school, St Joseph's Catholic Primary School, aiming to become one of the most infamous mass murderers in British history. His plan was to surpass the tragedies, including the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, by targeting approximately 30 children. To facilitate his plan, Prosper forged a firearms certificate to illegally purchase a double-barreled shotgun and ammunition. He conducted extensive online research on previous mass shootings and sought information on how to effectively use the weapon. On the mornings of the murders, Prosper's mother discovered the shotgun and confronted him, leading to a violent altercation. In the ensuing struggle, Prosper shot his mother in the head. He then proceeded to shoot his sister Giselle and inflicted fatal injuries on his brother Carl, who sustained both gunshot wounds and over 100 stab wounds. Following the murders, Prosper intended to carry out his planned attack on the primary school. However, the confrontation with his mother and the subsequent events disrupted his timeline, preventing him proceeding to the school. Upon his arrest, Prosper exhibited a disturbing demeanour, repeatedly stating, "It's not murder," to the arresting officers. Investigations revealed his obsession with previous mass shootings and a desire for notoriety. He had been consuming graphic and violent online content, which may have influenced his actions. Psychiatric evaluations diagnosed Prosper with autism spectrum disorder and identified psychopathic traits. However, it was determined that his condition did not impair his understanding or control over his actions, and the court acknowledged that whilst his autism may have contributed to his social isolation and fixation on violence, it did not absolve him of responsibility. During sentencing, the judge highlighted the premeditated nature of the intent to cause mass harm. The court recognised the bravery of the family members whose confrontation with Prosper potentially prevented a larger tragedy. The judge emphasised that their actions may have saved many lives by disrupting his plans. Having pleaded guilty to the offences of murder, Prosper was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 49 years. The judge considered imposing a whole life order, but took into account Prosper's age and his guilty plea. At number 10 is Nina Mercer, who was sentenced on the 19th of March. In July 2024, 43-year-old Mercer was residing with 61-year-old Alan Tompkins in his flat at Newark Court, Gun Lane in Strood in Kent. Alan had allowed Mercer to stay at his residence and was believed to be financially supporting her. On the afternoon of the 23rd of July 2024, while Alan was at home having received a food delivery, Mercer stabbed him multiple times, resulting in his death. Following the attack, Mercer fled the scene and met with an acquaintance called Lee Robinson. The two returned to the flat, where Robinson then stole Alan's wallet and bank card. Mercer then drove Alan's car to Cuxton Leisure Park, where it is believed she disposed of her blood-stained clothing. On the 25th of July, Mercer returned to Alan's flat with another associate. When the associate looked through the kitchen window and inquired if Alan could be lying on the hallway floor, Mercer dismissively denied that this was a possibility.
Concerns arose when Alan failed to appear at work and missed a planned meeting. On the evening of the 25th of July, an acquaintance contacted Kent Police to report his absence. Officers forced entry into his locked flat and discovered Alan deceased in the hallway with a knife protruding from his back. He had suffered 6 stab wounds. While officers were at the scene, Mercer approached the property and was promptly arrested. CCTV footage later revealed her suspicious movements near the victim's home, and forensic tests identified traces of her DNA on the knife used in the murder. Mercer was charged with murder on the 29th of July 2024, but pleaded not guilty at Maidstone Crown Court. Robinson denied assisting an offender, but admitted to theft and fraud related to the use of Alan's bank cards. Following a trial, Mercer was found guilty on the 14th of March 2025. She received a life sentence on the 18th of March 2025 with a minimum term of 17 years. Robinson was found not guilty of assisting an offender, but was convicted of theft and fraud, resulting in a sentence of 2 years and 4 months in prison.
At number 11 is Jason Holdgate, who was sentenced on the 20th of March. In November 2024, 72-year-old Michael Bradley was found deceased in his home on Whitethorn Close in York after concerned neighbours alerted authorities due to his uncharacteristic absence and inactivity. Upon forced entry, police discovered Michael with severe head and facial injuries, a stab wound to his neck, and bruising on his face, neck and body. Paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. An investigation revealed that in the 2 weeks leading up to Michael's death, he had allowed 2 individuals, Jason Holdgate and Nicola Beck, both known drug users leading chaotic lifestyles, to stay in his home and use his car. Neighbours became suspicious after noticing the presence of these unfamiliar individuals and the absence of Michael, who was typically seen maintaining his routine. On the 4th of November 2024, police forced entry into Michael's residence and found him dead. The autopsy revealed that he had suffered multiple injuries, including a depressed skull fracture and stab wounds to the neck. The cause of death was determined to be the result of repeated hammer blows to the head and stab wounds. Further inquiries led to the arrest of Holdgate and Beck. While Beck was initially arrested on suspicion of murder, subsequent investigations concluded that Holdgate was responsible for the killing. Both individuals were also charged with the theft of Michael's car, which they had sold to an unsuspecting buyer. On the 14th of March 2025, Holdgate pleaded guilty to the murder of Michael. He was sentenced at Leeds Crown Court on the 21st of March to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 18 years. The charge of vehicle theft was ordered to lie on the file. Beck, who was 43, pleaded guilty to the theft of Michael's car and received a 16-week jail sentence. At number 12 is Warren Spence, who was sentenced on the 24th of March. In February 2024, 44-year-old Samantha Varley was found dead in her flat on Brownhill Terrace in Hare Hills in Leeds. Her body was discovered on the 12th of February after family members raised concerns about her welfare, having been unable to contact her for several days. Samantha had been in a relationship with 55-year-old Spence for approximately 6 months. Their relationship was marked by Spence's controlling and violent behaviour. Samantha had previously expressed fear for her life, telling police, "He's going to end up killing me." Spence had a history of domestic violence, with previous convictions for assault on 3 other partners. His abusive behaviour towards Samantha included headbutting her, blackening her eyes, and dragging her by the hair. On the 8th of February 2024, Spence brutally attacked Samantha in her home. She suffered severe injuries, including 25 rib fractures and bite marks. The assault was so violent that the judge would go on to describe Spence as having behaved like an animal. Following the attack, Spence fled to Scarborough, where he was apprehended by police. He was charged with Samantha's murder and stood trial at Leeds Crown Court.
Despite his initial denials, the jury found him guilty of murder. On the 24th of March 2025, Spence was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 24 years. The judge, Mr. Justice Cotter, remarked, "You are a violent, manipulative and controlling man who has been a danger to women for many years." At number 13 is Nasan Saadi, who was sentenced on the 28th of March. In May 2024, at Bournemouth Durley Chine Beach, Saadi murdered 34-year-old Amy Gray and left her friend, 38-year-old Leanne Miles, seriously injured. Saadi meticulously planned the attack, conducting extensive research on police investigative methods and inquiring with his university lecturers about how to commit murder without detection. He also studied other high-profile murder cases and adopted online pseudonyms such as the Ninja Killer. In the weeks leading up to the attack, Saadi booked hotels in Bournemouth and conducted reconnaissance of the seafront area. He equipped himself with items to avoid leaving evidence and researched details of other high-profile murders. On the night of the 24th of May 2024, Saadi approached Amy and Leanne as they sat on the beach, enjoying the full moon. Without warning or provocation, he launched a brutal assault, stabbing Amy 10 times and Leanne more than a dozen times. Amy succumbed to her injuries at the scene, whilst Leanne survived despite sustaining severe wounds. Following the attack, Saadi attempted to evade capture by discarding his clothing and leaving Bournemouth early the next morning. He monitored news reports about the incident and initially denied involvement when confronted by the police, claiming mistaken identity. However, extensive CCTV footage, witness testimonies, and digital evidence, including his internet search history, linked him to the crime. During the trial at Winchester Crown Court, the prosecution presented evidence of Saadi's deep-seated misogyny and desire for notoriety. The court heard that he had a deeply suppressed rage towards society and women, fueled by feelings of humiliation and rejection. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Saadi showed no remorse. He was convicted of murder and attempted murder in December of 2024 and was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 39 years for the murder of Amy. He would later admit his guilt to a psychiatrist after the trial, expressing a desire for notoriety that a trial would provide. In sentencing Saadi, Judge Mrs. Justice Cutts remarked on his obsession with violence and declared him an extremely dangerous individual, likely to remain a threat. At number 14 is Marcin Majerkiewicz, who was sentenced on the 28th of March. In April 2024, the dismembered remains of 67-year-old Stuart Everett were discovered across multiple locations in Salford and North Manchester, prompting a complex murder investigation. Stuart, who was originally from Derby and born Roman Zemacki to Polish parents, shared a residence in Winton in Salford with Majerkiewicz and another Polish national, Michael Pacholski. The investigation revealed that Majerkiewicz harboured financial motives, intending to steal Stuart's money to address his mounting debts. The gruesome discovery began on the 4th of April 2024, when a human torso was found in Salford's Kersal Dale Nature Reserve. Subsequent searches led to the recovery of approximately 30% of Stuart's body parts, dispersed across various green spaces, including Bogart Hole Clough and Black Leach Reservoir. Despite extensive efforts, a significant portion of his remains were never located. CCTV footage played a pivotal role in the investigation, and Majerkiewicz was captured struggling to carry a heavy shopping bag, which was later determined to contain Stuart's torso. This evidence, combined with forensic analysis, led to his arrest whilst he was aboard a bus. Further examination of their shared residence uncovered substantial bloodstains in Majerkiewicz's bedroom. A section of carpet had been removed and replaced, with traces of blood found beneath the floorboards on the furniture. A missing piece of the carpet was later discovered in a skip outside of the property. After the murder, Majerkiewicz deceived Stuart's family by sending messages, birthday cards and gifts, creating the illusion that Stuart was still alive. This calculated deceit added to the emotional distress experienced by Stuart's relatives. He was found guilty of Stuart's murder and sentenced in March 2025 to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 34 years. During sentencing at Manchester Crown Court, Judge Mr. Justice Kavanagh condemned Majerkiewicz's actions as almost unbelievably cold-blooded and macabre, highlighting the profound disrespect shown towards Stuart's remains.